All right, today we start into Chapter 5, Section 2, which is called Practicing Communication Skills. This is actually a pretty short lesson, but a very important lesson is the best way I could describe it. All right, the first thing we're going to talk about is communication. All right, communication by definition is the exchange of thoughts, feelings, beliefs between two or more people. This is how well you communicate with just not your friends, but maybe a group of people. Public speaking 101 is all about communication, but communication isn't just about what you talk, it's also about what you hear. When you are communicating with people, there is the verbal exchange, spoken words, and the nonverbal communication. All right, and this is communication without words. Your nonverbals are almost as important, if not more important, than your verbal. Body language is part of your non-verbal skills. The use of visual cues to communicate information or feelings. This is always the one I love to talk about personally. Teenagers are quite infamous for having great body language all the time. It's like when I ask a kid, are you having a good day today? They say yes, and they have the little sarcastic twist to their body. Or even when you're asking somebody a serious question, and I remember I had a student one time that I had to ask some serious questions to, and I looked at them and said, have you been hurting yourself again? And they shook their head, but it was like their eyes were saying yes, but their head was shaking no. At which point I asked the student to pull up their sleeves of their sweatshirt and to find out they had been harming themselves. There are little things like that are always big indicators. All right, what within body language do we look at? We look at a person's postures. Are they standing upright? Are they slouched over, just kind of not into it? Teachers read posture all the time from our students. You give a lot, you tell a lot by how you sit in a chair. Next thing we talk about is intonation, which is another word for tone of voice. All right. Obviously, I have a very projectile voice, so people don't really wonder what I think because I'm going to say it and I'm going to put my tone how I want it to sound. This kind of goes back to that sarcastic question when you ask somebody if they're having a good day or not, and they say, "Why, yes, I am," very sarcastically. And then the other part of that is just how it is said is as important as what is said. Okay. I always think of the movie Mighty Ducks. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it. There's a part in there where the coach looks at one of the hockey players and says, or looks at the hockey team and says, "You guys don't know what it's like for you to use sarcasm to be misinterpreted." The kid simply responses was "No, we have no clue at all." And it's true. It's how it is said is so important. Most of us have heard the line from our parents at some point in time. That basically is, watch your tone of voice with me, and I don't need any sarcasm from you. Those two things alone usually tell a parent a lot. My daughter finds this out on a regular basis when I have to look at her and say, watch your tone or watch your language. And sometimes I'm not even talking about what she's saying. It's her body language is so terrible when I tell her to do something. She gets so angry. To go along with that, we get what we call the mixed message. A mixed message is when your words say one thing, but your body and language says, or intonation says something completely different. This kind of, like I said, refers back to that movie. I mean, you guys know of 101 situations of people who literally say one thing, but it's like they're saying something completely different with their body. Athletes in sports are quite infamous for this, where they'll say one thing, but they'll kind of give a gesture another way that makes you think just the polar opposite. Those are just a couple of things I can think of off the top of my head. All right, let's talk about effective communication. To be an effective communicator, you need two sets of skills. And one of those sets of skills is you got to have speaking skills. Speaking skills is how you deliver it. Okay, some of you probably think I got really good speaking skills. Some of you think I got really terrible speaking skills. Most of you would agree is that when I say something, you're going to hear it. It's how you want to divulge how I say it. All right. Speaking skills are very important. If you ever go to a 4-year school, one class you're required to take is public speaking. You got to get up and be able to speak in front of people. You're going to do it at some point in time. To go along with that, then, just as critical as anything else, is you have to have listening skills. And this is how much of the message you want to hear or is heard. When you are listening, you need to make sure your focus is what you're hearing. It is not something else. It's not what is going on over there. It's not what text am I getting on my phone right now. It's not do I need to go out to the concession stand to get something to eat. Your focus needs to be on what you are listening to. When speaking, use I messages, all right? And this is a whole list of things when you're using speaking skills. I messages oftentimes are used to make it so that you're telling what you feel and what you think, all right? Or what I feel and I think, I should say. When you get using the you term in there, now you're putting words in other people's mouths, and this oftentimes is not accepted very well. Okay. Also, when you get up and speak, you must stay calm. Yeah, it's normal for you to be a little nervous when you get up and speak. That's fine. But once you get up and start speaking, a lot of times people just calm down the more they start talking, because then they get more comfortable with where they are with it. From there, stick to the point, all right? I, even on here, sometimes have trouble with this when I sometimes venture off a little bit when I'm talking to you guys about stuff. Stick to the point. Like right now we're talking about speaking. I need to make sure that my focus is on talking about how we can speak effectively and communicate effectively with people around us. Choose the right place to stop, okay? And this is very critical as well. You need to say what you need to say, but you don't want to be just abrupt stop, walk away. Okay? If you have any loose ends, any points in the story you didn't completely cover, whatever you're trying to talk about, you need to take the time to make sure that you finish those, tie it all together, and put it in a bow so that everyone understands what you're trying to say. Also, be aware of your body language and intonations when you're speaking. Okay, an intonation there, we mean that it's good to use voice inflection and those things to make sure that you're keeping the audience on edge, keep them involved, or whoever you're talking to in general. Just make sure that as you're saying those things that you're not going to be too brash, too abrasive. Make sure your body language says you're happy to be there. You want to communicate with whoever you're talking to. All right, listening skills. First of all, to be a good listener, you have to be actively listening, okay? Like I said, you've got to want to be there. You got to want to hear it. Us teachers, here again, we are actively looking for this. We can tell if kids are actively listening or just kind of off in la-la land. And we want kids that actively listen so that we know that our message is getting across. Okay, when you're actively listening, you're hearing, thinking about, and responding to the other person's message, all right? This is like if a teacher's given an assignment. You do this problem on this page, and they are due at this time, okay? So you hear it, you think about it, and then you respond to the person's message. Sometimes it's a nonverbal cue where you just look up at somebody, kind of just nod your head and say, okay, I understand. Those things are very important when it comes to listening. And something that it says there right now is very critical. You must pay attention to everything being said. I can't tell you the number of times where kids only heard part of what I told them to do in their assignment. Then all of a sudden they get mad at me when it's not. I mark something wrong. They're like, but you didn't say that. I look over at another classmate and said, did I say that? And they go, yes, you did. It's because I only heard part of the instructions, not the whole thing. You must pay attention when you're listening to someone to everything that is being said. And then again, like anything else, use body language that shows you're listening. Be upright. Be sitting properly. I'm not saying you have to be, totally engaged, eyes forward, big, listening. But you got to show that you're listening. People respect you more when you show that you're listening, and they're more likely to tell you more information. Okay, once you've heard what they're saying, take a moment to think about what people are speaking or what people have said to you. So then if you have a question or you need to respond, you make sure that it's a well thought out response. This is where you sometimes get the saying, insert foot into mouth. Oftentimes teenagers they react to what's being said to them. In turn, what that does is actually makes people usually more upset and angry with them because they didn't actually stop and think about what they're saying before they said it. Last thing you always need to do if you're an active listener is that if you hear something and you got a question, don't be afraid to formulate it, all right? Formulate it, look at the person, ask them that question. Typically, most people aren't going to be offended if you ask the question. They actually encourage you to ask questions because to them, that's a sign that you're actually engaged in the conversation. All right, that is section 2. Make sure you go ahead and read this section on your own. We will be doing the problems at the end of this section, 1 through 5. Make sure you use complete sentences. All right, have a good day.